the need that the founding faculty are eventually going to need to sit. So really being conscious of, we want this to be more than people driven. We want this to be, you know, what we care about driven. And SJTI for me is always the light switch. I cried for 5 days. First time I ever talked about being bi or multiracial or mixed race. And it has been a great space of healing for me in so many different of my identities. And I am actually going to, and I want to acknowledge that I am on the Kauai land of the Kauai, and honoring the space that I can be here, right? And I can be in this space of teaching and connecting and creating community, and honoring that there's space around me that has been created for me to be whole. So with that, I am going to pass to Darrell.
Hi, everyone. My name is Darrell Brooks. I hail from Baltimore on the lands of the Piscataway, Lumbee, and Cherokee bands. In addition to that, I work at Hopkins as a research associate in the Department of Epidemiology, and started my SJTI journey in 2010, where it was one of the most transformative experiences of my young, supple life as a emerging graduate student, young professional. And it was in that space that I really started to understand the importance of healing and self-work in order to sort of create a different type of vibe, not only within myself, but how I was building across relationships and identities, particularly across racialized and ethnic identities. And I just excited to be here. I'm on the back end, sort of, I'll be doing some tech stuff, but you'll still see me. So if you have questions, you know, you can raise your hand, and then we move into those spaces, we can answer those questions. And we'll be definitely using the chat feature a lot. And so did I, he, him, his pronouns? So yeah. And so I will pass it to Dr. Aubert.
Hey, Darrell. Hey, I'm Kathy Aubert. Just feeling deep gratitude of the lands of the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, and the Ute here in Denver. And as another one of our faculty, Dr. Carmen Rivera, asked a couple days ago, what is your relationship with members of the original custodians, as well as other Native Indigenous groups that are in the lands where you are? And I came up real short. It just reminded me as a white person and part of the settler colonizer group, how little personal relationship and systemic intervention, be supportive relationship around dismantling colonization, genocide that is still happening today. And that's what we do at SJTI. So we help people see how far you need to go. And as a white founder, when Mara Cullen, Jamie Washington, Vernon Wall, 1997, we were like, what do people do after, even if they get something in grad school? What do they do? And I said, I need support. And so for me, SJTI, especially as we, the second year, moved into really looking at racism, race immersion, white supremacy, dismantling and eradicating, has been a space for me of a community of friends and colleagues. And then every SJTI, I, especially in the white accountability groups, get to see more of the racist behaviors and attitudes and how I uphold white supremacy culture in ways. Just keep learning and unlearning and recommitting to wanting to be a part of, partnering with, following the leadership of folk of color, indigenous folk, multiracial folk, so that we truly can create true racial justice in this country and the world. So that's what SJTI is for me. It's just one of the places to truly keep learning and deepening. And I love the Whiteness Caucus as we do. Ale. Dr. Alejandro Covarrubias.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Dr. Aleko Ruiz, he, him, his pronouns. I am in Oxnard, California, the original land of the Chumash tribe, here with my family right now. So really fortunate to be on this land and in partnership in this land. My family has been here and honoring the indigenous people of this land. I started with SJTI as a participant in 2009, was an intern, supported student SJTI as a small group facilitator, and I am part of the Next Gen faculty. For me, SJTI is about hope. It's about being in a space of creation, liberation, and that we can be in a critical space in community, deconstruct the things and unlearn the things that we need to, but also find the ways to rebuild. I think so often when we engage in social justice work, it's only about the destruction. It's only about the deconstructing critique of something. It was in SJTI that I learned how to hope, and I learned how to have vision for the future of what justice, particularly racial justice, could be. So SJTI is a deeply, deeply transformational experience for me. And every time I'm at Institute, I feel like I am filled back up with the hope that I need to move forward. And I will invite in Vernon.
Thanks, Ale. Vernon Wall, he, him, his. I'm logging in from North Carolina, where I get to hang out with my family tomorrow and Sunday. The lands of the Cherokee and the Lumbee, and specifically sharing love to my sister-in-law, who is of the Lumbee Nation. And so also want to say it's Juneteenth. And so I'm just excited to be here in celebration and also to reflection of this day and what it means and for the Black community and for all of us. I'm one of the founding faculty of the Social Justice Training Institute, and for me, SJTI is about love. I think that one of the things that is so interesting to me in this work is that I've always felt that social justice is about love and about joy. And I do believe specifically as we navigate this work, we forget that because there's a lot happening. And I think that the surprise that people have when they attend the Institute is that there's a lot of laughter and a lot of recognizing people's humanity. And I really believe that that's a shock for people, especially as the faculty roll in. And if you know us, you know that we can laugh and we enjoy each other's company. And I think people are surprised that there is the energy of joy and happiness. And that's what we want to make sure that people leave with, is that this work can be tough, and it is tough. And it's also rewarding, and I can say that I would not want to be doing anything else but that. So thank you, glad you're here. And I'm gonna turn it over to Beth.
Hi, I'm Beth Other Cohen. My pronouns are she, her, hers, or they, them, theirs. I am in Columbia, Maryland, and in the current lands of the Piscataway Indian Nation, the Piscataway Conoy tribe, and the Cedarville Band of the Piscataway. And I am a faculty apprentice. I'm deeply honored to be in that journey with SJTI. I first attended SJTI in 2014, if my math is correct. And then, and any of you who know better, let me know. And then was an intern in 2017, and then have been an apprentice since then. And for me, it was a turning point, an absolute turning point in my journey. I'd been doing racial justice work for close to 15 years at that point, and had never been challenged and pushed in the ways that I was in that 4.5 days and it was an essential turning point for me in my life. And so I am grateful for every opportunity to be with others in that journey. And Tanya, I saw, come on in.
Thanks, Beth. My name is Tanya Williams, and I use she and they pronouns. I'm looking at Harlem, New York, northern New York City, and this is the land of the Lenape people, or the Lenape. Heard it both ways. From what I can tell, we get to talk about how we came into SJTI, and I'm looking at Craig because I'm fascinated to know what his story was, because we were in the same group in 1999 when I first went through SJTI. And to hear folks say everything like Ale, Vernon, Beth, exactly what you've said, that it was a turning point for me in my own understanding of myself and my own understanding of my identity. That was the first year that we did race as an intensive, and it really broke open my understanding of the ways in which I had internalized racism and how that impacted my life. I have been on a journey since then, and so that was probably when I was, I don't know, late 20s, probably 27. I'm 48 now, about to be 48. And I am on that journey is a deep one, and I'm glad that I've been on it this long, and thanks to SJTI for that. I'm a part of the Next Gen faculty, and I am overjoyed to get to be here. I think I get to hand it to Jamie.
Yay, handing it to me. Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here. I am Jamie Washington. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I am greeting you all today from the original homelands of the Piscataway people and tribe who are still in the place, who are still currently here, the original caretakers of this land, and I just breathe in the legacy, right, as we start together. I honor also at this moment, Juneteenth, and the legacy and the ancestry of Black people at this particular moment in time and history. I have been with SJTI since the beginning. Dr. Kathy O'Bear and myself and Vernon Wall and Dr. Tamara Cullen, we're kind of hanging out as friends, sitting around looking at, in our youthful arrogance, because we were arrogant, just a touch, around how we was gonna fix higher education because they wasn't doing it right. So that was part of what was happening at the conversation. And our desire was to create a space where we could do deeper work. So I have been, as a founding member of this team, and just delighted to be here with so many of you on this day in particular. So, and thank you to the leadership and the next generation of leaders for the Institute for holding this space. Thank you. Is there someone else to hand off to? Okay, so put your hand up so I can know. Who hasn't gone yet? Oh,
And
okay,
Sam,
good.
yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll hand off to Sam, and then you can take it from there. Great.
So hi, everyone. Delighted to be here with everyone. I'm Sam Offer. If you look at my screen, it says Jamie Washington, but I'm Sam Offer, AKA Jamie Washington when he's not around. I am so delighted to be here. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I came on to SJTI in 2008, and what a transformative experience it was for me, and continues to be, as has been said by so many folks. What I hold about SJTI, I serve as faculty for the student experience. I do that along with Dr. Carmen Rivera, who is not present with us, and Dr. Craig Elliott. And Vernon talked about fun. You're talking about fun. We have fun, some serious fun with the experience. And so just excited to be able to lead in that way. What I hold about SJTI, and Ale entered with hope, and I had written down 3 words, and they were hope, care, and love. That as I get to do this transformative work, it is done in hope, it's done in care, and it's done in love. And it is one of the spaces where I know that I get held in that way, no matter how I show up, no matter what I do. It is about the hope, the care, and the love that keeps me grounded. And so not only do we have fun, but we are a family that love one another, that care for one another. And I see that every day as I'm a part of this team, and I'm just delighted to be a part of this team. And with that, I'll pass to Dr. Craig Elliott.
Thank you, Sam. So yeah, my name's Craig Elliott, he, him, his, and I am just outside of Oakland, California, in the land of the Chochenyo and Ohlone. Grateful to be here with you all. I went to SJTI with Tanya in 1999, and Beth Yohe, who's also one of our faculty members, and it was a life-changing experience. And certainly echo the hope and the love, but for me, it was also for me to be aware of the systems that were at play and learning how I contributed to white supremacy and patriarchy, and some, really was participating in the oppression that I was wanting to change. And so it really gave me some tools and put me on a journey that has, like others have said, changed my life. I interned in 2002, and I joined the faculty of the student experience in 2016. So just grateful to be here with you all, and thank you all for just being here with us today. So back to Becky.
Wonderful. We wanted to give you a little flavor of who we are, right? As well as just to hear where our place, right, where our energy, where our spirit is in regards to SJTI, because that is one of the things that I think makes it really special. Maybe that's just us, but I think it really develops community in deep, meaningful, critical ways. So being able to meet us. And then also want to reiterate that not on screen is Beth Yohe, right, and Carmen Rivera, who have done a lot, particularly for us behind the scenes, and to make all of this past week happen. And so we want to give you now information around particularly the Professional Institute, and we're going to hand that over to Vernon.
Great. Thanks, Becky. Just want to remind folks, if you haven't put your name, pronouns, and where you're joining us from in the chat box, please do. We know some folks have joined us while we were introducing ourselves. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history of SJTI. Kathy and Jamie shared some of that, and really just want to add that yes, I do believe Jamie is completely right. We entered in a sense of let's kind of fix higher education, and I'm so glad he mentioned that, because I do believe, I do remember, and for those of you that do not know, Kathy, Jamie, Mara, and I really have presented together during a time in the 80s, believe it or not, in the 80s, yes, Jamie's the oldest, and the 90s. And but we were together, we had this energy around. So what do we do? What can we do? And I want to make sure folks know this was us giving back to the profession. It really was. We decided we wanted to develop something where there could be an opportunity for people to gather who have social justice in them, maybe in their positions, maybe in who they are. Keep in mind that this was during a time when diversity, multiculturalism, all of these terminologies were sort of moving around in our universe, in our higher education universe. We really there weren't a lot of opportunities for professional development around these terminologies, around skill development. So we just pulled together and said, let's do something and then see where it goes. And in 1998, we rolled out our very first institute, and we will all agree that we probably were not the most effective that we could have been, probably because we focus on oppression, all areas of oppression, because we were going to knock it out. And we realized that, no, after that first institute, there's no way that we can get to the depth and breadth of the feeling and connection that we needed to do if we went broad. And then that's why we started in 1999 doing the race immersion. So we can go in deep in one form of oppression, but then pull out and then think about the learnings from there. So we're going to talk in a minute about the actual curriculum and stuff. I just want to let you know that that's where we started. The energy was there. The faculty, Becky shared the faculty that are a part of our institute and our next gen faculty. You can just jump on our website at sjti.org. All of our bios are there. You'll see the experiences that we've had, and you've met us here. And so just know that we are definitely committed, and I know that Jamie and Kathy have mentioned this before along with Becky, is that we are committed to the next generation of social justice advocates. And that means providing for folks who will move in when Jamie and Kathy and I step down and move on. We believe this is a movement, and it's not just about those of us that are founding faculty, it's about all of us moving together. And as the context of our country continues to shift, as we are watching daily and hourly, we know more than ever that SJTI is extremely important for the work that we do in higher education and the world. Because I want to let folks know that while we started off as a higher education, with a higher education base in terms of the people who attended, we now are much broader in terms of corporate, nonprofit, synagogues, mosques, churches, you name it, in terms of people who are connected. So we've moved to more of a community-based piece too. So those are the things I'll give you now. And then remember, as we move forward, add some things in the chat box if you have questions for us. So I'm going to turn it over to Becky to talk a little bit about the application process and sort of preparing for SJTI.
Yeah, thanks, Vernon. Applications. Well, we're in a pandemic, and so we have a typical process. We're not quite sure what that's going to look like and be like for the next, at least, institute. And typically, right, the way that we do it is for December's institute, we put applications out around early July to mid-July. And then for the June's institute, applications usually are available around February. So, keep an eye out in those particular months if you want to apply. We have about 150 plus people that apply per institute, knowing that we take around 42 to 45. Okay? So we know that not everybody gets in, right? At least the first time. We are believers that the universe will get you into the institute when you're supposed to. And there are multiple reads of the application from different faculty because we have different filters going into there. We ask for identities, and that's important for us. And because we have a race immersion as a significant part of the process and of the learning, we pay attention to race critically, right? To see who is there, because as we are in process, it is important around race and who's in the room. Okay? And then we usually let folks know around mid-September or early to mid-April of acceptance. We no longer do like deferments. Some people ask that just because we have such a high number, and there's lots of moving parts around that. And if you can't go to one institute, right, you've been accepted, then we suggest to apply again, right? Because even on the application, it'll say, have you applied before? Let's see here. Preparation. Kathy will talk a little bit about this. This is not a 101. So that's the one thing to go into it is if you or others are at the more 101 space, we will provide resources for you to go and seek further development or seek some development and knowledge. This is really a development laboratory for us to continue to learn who we are, right? Self as instruments important. Right? And so, you know, the preparation is, okay, you know, we don't need everything in the cognitive. That is not what we're looking for in the application. You can be read, you can know theories, you could write theories, you can know models. It is how do I engage race, right, in equitable spaces? How does my race stories show up and how I lead, how I'm in community, right? So think about that and feel about that when you are considering the application. And knowing that not everybody gets in this round. And so as we think about the flow of the week, right, in SJT, I'm going to hand it off to Kathy.
Thank you. Becky, as you're sharing and everyone has been talking, I'm just really grounding in that this is I have it a spiritual sacred space for deep healing. Because what most participants will say is, I get to see how far I've come, like what I know, maybe even how I engage effectively, but boy, am I quickly seeing where I easily have a hot button or triggered, or where I'm not as competent, or where I've internalized dominance for folks that identify as white and or have white as some of your ancestry as a multiracial person. And for folk, as Tanya mentioned and others, where I have absorbed white supremacy culture, internalized racism as someone who is marginalized as a person of color, indigenous, multiracial person. And so it is such deep healing work. And yet so many people still come thinking it's a train the trainer. And so it just hit me. I think the application starts the process to have to answer the questions. What are the racist dynamics? And we may want to be adding white supremacy culture, right? And anti-Black racism, given our context. And I just thought of those. So who knows what other faculty are thinking about to the application. So people are beginning to already realize, I got to do some self-work, because that's what it is. And once you're selected, we send out some readings. They're on the website. And so whether it's about white supremacy culture, navigating triggers, and then we ask everyone to start being a part of building the community by sharing on Facebook page a couple articles you have found that particularly help blow up the binary, the Black-white binary. And in this context, keeping anti-Black racism a part of the centered conversation, while we also look at all implications, manifestations of racism, colonization, and just keep breathing, because I'm extroverting and I don't know what the next one's going to look like, because we've done 42, 3, I've lost count. Each one is different, and especially these last 5 or 6 years since the murder of Michael Brown and Ferguson, that's my memory, is that we have been reacting and influenced by the current dynamics. And so, and I'd love other faculty to jump in and just jump in when you want to add. Also on Facebook, people find roommates and they come, and then we do an informal dinner on the first day that you can go to. So it really is about reaching out, connecting that relationship. And then we start day one, Monday, 6 p.m., building the learning community. And while some of the activities may look familiar, we really ask people to take off your trainer hat, take off your performance and all your privileged identities, but particularly as white people, and show up fully, authentically you. And the first night there is room for claiming many of your different intersecting identities. And we also begin the race immersion that night. And as someone has said, we go deep in race And eventually we will pull out we won't be done with racism, but we'll start reflecting on what are we learning about privilege and marginalization? What are we learning about systemic oppression as we look at in depth race? And so we want all of our presence here, and we are really focusing. It's become about 2.5 days, the race immersion. It keeps growing a little bit. So the first night, we're doing skill building around what are you noticing about yourself as a racialized being? What are you noticing about the racist, racialized dynamics, even as you come? What are you noticing even in this community, in our dynamics, even in this first couple hours together? And we invite people to form core groups, which is one of our first major technologies, a cross-race identity group, 6-7 people, where we're building more intimacy and authenticity. We form high five buddies. So again, a chance for deepening authenticity and intimacy with self, with others, and really understanding group level and systems. As we move into day 2, it's like, boom, race immersion. And we use the large group to stir. If folks aren't felt stirred yet by that second day, in your privileged and marginalized identities, you are feeling, there you go, Jamie, dance away, stirring. And it depends. Sometimes by mid-morning, there is conversation, conflict. Here's what I'm noticing as, and then some people, particularly white people, are like, oh, the white fragility. So we are real and authentic. And I don't know if we can say that enough. Even though each one's different, by that morning, the dynamics of racism and white supremacy are alive and well individually and collectively, and we are holding that space because as a laboratory, it's like we're learning, we're not fixing, but we are teaching skills to be present and to maybe unlearn. We're also looking at the common group level. So what are the common dynamics in our stories of socialization, racist interpersonal aggressions, and systemic embedded racism as we're finishing day 2. And people are breathing deeply because all kind of trauma is getting re-stimulated, all kinds of fear. And so we're holding it all, and we believe all healing is happening. And some folk might be saying, F this, because they're like, and yet we believe healing is happening as we're in emotions and conflict. And can I ask if anybody else wants in? I know Vernon and Becky are holding this, so I don't want to do that unless you want me to do that. I saw a nod. I was going to move on, but any other faculty have thoughts about day 1, day 2, or anything else before I kind of talk about caucus day?
I would just add, Kath, we are believing not only is healing happening, discovery is happening. And so folks are discovering stuff that they had buried or didn't even know was there. They're remembering stories about their own journeys, their race journeys. They're beginning, and so in some of that, there's deep despair. So folks are tapping into some knowing or some memories around things that they hadn't paid attention to in a while. It's the place where the mask begin to come off. The imposter syndrome stuff begins to show up real for folks, and then folks often in that space begin to think about relationships. So I'm thinking about the relationship that I have with my colleague back at work and how I've shown up and what I've said and what I didn't say. And so those are the things that begin to flash. Lots of folks at that time, they want to go and make phone calls and talk about, stuff that are folks that are back. They also are then thinking about significant others. So often in this space where folks have best friends, where folks have children, and folks who have partners across race, stuff gets stirred in that space around that.
And while we're holding space in the large groups, small groups, this cross-race core groups, we begin similar racialized identities, looking at norms. Folks are also using the time at break and lunches and dinners and before breakfast to reach out and connect. Because as Jamie so powerfully shared, folks, as they're hitting something, they're like, I've been told some folk of color saying, I don't want to talk to my high five buddy who's white right now. And so finding other folks, and some white folks are like, I might be scared. Right. So there's all kinds of before, during, after, and that's part of the experience. So we do invite folks to stay however you need to, so that you can also be around into the early to mid evening. I don't stay up past 9:30, but some folks do in all kinds of ways. I kind of like start singing when it's day 3 caucus day, because the white accountability space and then the folk of color, multiracial, biracial spaces, indigenous spaces, I think are the deep opportunities for healing. And folks are usually pretty ready to be with similar racialized identity and our privileged and marginalized dynamics to be able to get even more honest and real as we are stirring and discovering. Those are most of that day. And then as we come out of that, we are moving into meaning making. And so we pull out to look at, so what did we just experience? What are some concepts to kind of be able to hold that experience? And how is that similar within and across different racialized forms of oppression? Other forms of oppression that have race as an intersection. There's so much more. And I hope you're getting the flavor that it is incredibly experiential. It's incredibly authentic, real, engaging. And you will, if you show up, you will leave transformed. And I can count, 5 white people that I think probably did not leave transformed because they did not leave. So it is here if you want it. And then we leave. What are we learning and how are we going to re-enter and show up more effectively, knowing we need lots more support, lots more learning, lifelong healing. I think I'm almost at time, but I will follow your leadership in case you want me to say anybody else.
I did have a question in the chat for us. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a question around, are there factors that people should consider or advice to evaluate, that we're using to evaluate their competency level to determine if the time is right for them to apply?
You're pointing to me? Okay. So white people, if you're at all performative, if you are swirling in all kinds of fear, defensiveness, if you're not able to show up in white accountability groups in your area, if you're not doing reading, if any of that, if you come, white people on their applications sound like they're ready, and then most white people show up and they often have very different experiences thinking, I thought I knew what I was doing. So I would encourage some other self-work, some other places. This is a place of deep, deep work. Am I overstating? Okay. No. Anybody want to speak to the same question for multiracial, biracial, folk of color, monoracial, indigenous?
Yeah. And I think it's kind of similar to Kathy, like, we don't need you to just be in the knowing space, right? And as we read applications, what catches us is the work that people are, like the self-work that people have done or are leaning into. We can read if folks are being vulnerable on the application or not, right? And I think a big part of SJTI is vulnerability, right? And not knowing just that I'm the, multicultural affairs person doing work on a campus, and how am I doing work with consciousness? What am I afraid of or I'm fearful of? How does that play into how I do my work? So those are pieces that we pay attention to on the application, that it is, SJTI's head and heart work. And we can clearly notice on it where people are at are in their answers. Yeah.
I didn't do it's not a train the trainer. Do you still want that piece or have Jamie come in and do that part, or think I did enough?
I think you did enough. Yeah. Yeah.
Becky,
okay. Yeah.
question in the box. Do you want me to offer it?
Yes.
How are mixed race folks received? Is it appropriate to be present and learn in multiple identities caucuses if multiple race identities are salient?
Yes, yes, and yes. Yeah. So, SJTI is holds space for fluidity for people that hold more than one racial identity in their body and want to work that. And so there are times for caucus spaces in various forms. And we know that we're still in the construct of race and we're in the construct of time. So there still is this dynamic of where to go. So I have these options. And as I have these options, that means that I only can go if I want to go to, I'll use myself as an example, who's somebody who's mixed race, Latina and Asian, that means I have to choose, right? So I can go to one and miss out on the other two, or I can go to all three and I miss out on time there. And we are, it's something that's continually evolving. And I'm not quite sure in this construct of race how we can do it different. And we're still open to that. And I think that for mixed race, biracial folks, it's not this ain't new to us. And with it still comes pain, right? Or discomfort or landing on you in some way. But yes, have those opportunities to be in your multiple communities.
As I'll just add, Becky, as well as the creation and being in a space of mixed race and biracial, right? Multiracial. So you don't have to decide necessarily to work this part of you or that part of you or the other. You can be in a fully mixed race space with other mixed race folks and engage the complexities and the nuances of living with all of this in your body as well. So as much as you get to go to monoracial spaces, you also get to hold mixed race space.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for that question.
And Becky,
yeah.
Well, and Becky, one of the things I'm thinking about as Kathy was talking, I was really thinking about how there are some dynamics that happen within oppression and within white supremacy that are very salient to just the work that we do. And we say things like, well, we don't want to center whiteness, or we would like for there to be this engaged experience. And people believe that, I think that people don't see how that can happen. And what tends to happen is people come into SJTI and replicate the things that they've seen and experienced throughout their lives, whether it be white people become silent. People of color then tend to believe that they're teaching white people. And there's these dynamics that I think is so interesting that folks say, well, we want a different experience, but I've found that when people enter, they still enter in that white supremacist sort of way of doing the work. And then I do believe that SJTI helps us look at that and then think and see other ways in which we can engage the work. Because I really believe that people don't have the school that we have. We have maybe the academic knowledge around. Oh, this is what not centering whiteness looks like. But then we've never really practiced it. And so I do believe that there are things like that that people do in this space, though, that really pushes against some of the things that are happening.
Yeah, thanks for that ad. So just quickly around the I wasn't accepted piece of the application, we can talk with you. Some people will reach out to say, well, can you tell me how? And it's usually not why I didn't get accepted, but how I can be accepted in the future. And it is those things that we've been talking about, right? Let yourself be in your application, not what you think we want to hear. So just wanted to add that as a piece of the process, and then talk with you a little bit about next gen, in knowing that, eventually Kathy, Jamie, and Vernon are going to want to rest. Rest is revolutionary. uh, and very intentional around, so what does next gen look like, and how are we training folks, and who is a part of that? And so I am holding and leading that process. And we are continuing to bring in faculty for development. It's not just training, it's development, right? Development, community connection, you know, because we are continuing to work on ourselves in that space. And so know that, you know, we have SJTI for years ahead. And we've already talked about who those next gen folks are. And as we think about next gen, we also, if you attend SJTI, you'll also notice that we'll have some interns. And so we'll have Ale talk a little bit about the interns.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that I love about the SJTI experience is that it's not just the Institute, that the opportunities to engage with the community, and we have lots of ways to engage, but the Institute is a week long, but the community is lifelong. And one of the ways in which we can engage is really as an intern. So we will reach out to the SJTI alum every year or so, depending on how many interns we have. Each institute has 2 interns. They really do provide a lot of support around some of the logistical planning, making sure that the faculty can really be present in holding the space, but also the interns are observers. They are paying attention to the process. So I think for me, one of the most difficult things as a participant is to take off the facilitator hat. And we often I held on to that hat because it was a way to protect myself from being vulnerable. So as a participant, I really had to be vulnerable in that way. As an intern, I got to be a learner. I really got to be involved in the space, make the observations, and really deepen my skill of panning, which is a skill that we teach in SJTI. And so we ask that interns we ask that folks wait about at least a year or 2 after their SJTI experience to apply to be an intern. That's because we want to make sure that you have some space to process, to learn, and really get some clarity around what are your next developmental pieces. Because the intern role, as much as it contributes to the Institute, we also want to make sure that it's developmental for you professionally and personally. I think it's a phenomenal way to get involved and really learn more deeply about how to hold space in the process. Any other ads from folks around being an intern, particularly next gen folks, as we've all kind of interned in different points? All right, as soon as I think we're good. Yeah, turn it back over to Becky.
Awesome. One of the components of SJTI is also student SJTI. I'm going to have Craig and maybe Sam talk about that just a little bit so that you know what is available for students that you work with.
Thank you. Yeah, so our investment also is creating and supporting the next generation. So our students and how we are bringing growth and development. And I love how Ali, you talked about like this is this lifelong relationship. And so how are we starting out with our students and helping them do their own process at their own level? So we take a lot of the core pieces of SJTI, we scale them down developmentally, of course, and the time is a bit shorter, but it's really around these same ideas about really helping our younger students all across the country begin to understand their relationship to oppression, white supremacy, racism, and work that they can do about beginning the healing process and beginning the accountability process, but also then being able to see how joyful in relationships that we can be as we're working through. So we've been doing this for 12 years, I think. And so Yeah, it's been a really powerful experience, to just, and a gift, I think, to spend this kind of deep time with students in a ways that I often don't get on my campus, because it's so quick, and so just it's a really nice touch point. Sam, anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add that there is an application process for the student experience as well, that we invite folks to send students from their campuses to the Institute, and these are often students who are doing some type of advocacy work on their campuses, and so there is some level of development that we're hoping that they have had as they look forward to coming to the Institute. And so two things that came up for me that I think that mirrors the professional Jamie name, discovery. And I think this is a time of discovery for many of our young people, and many of our young people find community. And so lots of our students that come to us are the onlys on their campuses, and they're looking for community. So it's a space to invite them into community, to know that they're not alone in the work that they're doing. And so it is also a place where there is opportunity for folks who've done the Professional Institute to also serve as facilitators, as core facilitators with us. It is also a space to do some development work as well. And so we definitely want to put that out there, because that is another opportunity, as Ale talked about as well. There are no scholarships that are available for the student yet, but we do work with folks, with their institutions and with folks who are financially strained. And so we try to work through that to be helpful as much as possible. And so that's a conversation that we welcome as well. Yeah.
And so we had two questions quickly, as I know we're approaching time. I just wanted to know if you could talk to about the application. Are there scholarships? And then two, what's the total cost of SJTI? And then also, if there were multiple people applying from the same team, how was that evaluated?
How about all of those details are on the website? Cost, scholarships, all of that can be found there at sjti.org. We really pay attention to multiple people from the same institution or organization. And so we often don't have 7 people from the same organization. Is it possible? There's always possibility, and we work not to have that, particularly if there's positional power, right, within those applicants, how people can show up authentic. So that's something that is paid attention to. Yeah.
And sometimes, as Becky named, that there are, so I'm Latinx, I'm multiracial, I'm white, I'm African American. So again, as we were looking at the applications, we've got different racialized identities represented there. So across institution, departments, and so on and so forth. So sometimes there is a team that can get selected from your campus. And if you put in an application that part of our initiative is that this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to send a team of folks to do this. So there's considerations, there's possibilities, there's not absolutes around any of that. But so if you're wanting to think about that, please feel free to consider it. We do take into account, as Becky said, all of those dynamics. Yeah. You want me to go ahead and take that next piece now? So one of the things that's important, again, as we think about SJTI, is that all of these folks here that you see as faculty and Next Gen, and all of us are committed, just as we were as founders, to giving back to higher education. SJTI is our contribution to the world, right? So there's often, one of the questions was, what's the total cost of SJTI? And that really, we really can't actually measure the total cost of SJTI, right? In terms of the emotional, physical, psychic labor and energy that we put into the Institute. There is a total fee. You know, you can work out what the money is that you and your institution get to pay, but part of what we feel is important for folks to know is that the folks who are a part of this faculty are contributors. And so we don't take any fees for this work. We take no money for SJTI. Everything goes into the running of the Institute and giving back to our communities. Alongside of that, folks are often saying, well, can we bring SJTI to our campus, you know, after having had the experience, or people go back to their campuses after having been to SJTI and folks see how you have been transformed or re-energized or re-engaged in the work. And it's like, well, can we just bring it to us? So while we take no money for the Institute, we do charge to come to your campus. So all of the skill that is represented here is not for naught. And you can individually connect with us. You can talk with us collectively about what the costs would be to bring Kathy or Vernon or Sam or Becky or Beth or Ale to your campus to do some of the work. It is not possible to replicate SJTI on your campus. It's a different thing. We can bring the tools, we can bring the skill, and we can bring the knowing, but there is a particular energy that is created when you bring 50 people together from across the country in a 5-day experience. It just can't be replicated when, well, we're gonna bring all our hall directors. Let's bring 30 of them and have SJTI. They can have an experience and it can be transformative and powerful, but it doesn't show up that way. Becky? Is it back to you? You're muted.
Thank you. One of the things that we do not know yet, and we will get information on our website as we make, as time continues to unfold, is while we have an institute slated for December, we don't know yet. Right? It's supposed to be in December in Long Beach, and we're connecting with the hotel and all of those pieces, just like many of you that are on campuses or in orgs are like, right? We are in that same place. So while our intention is to have it in December, we don't know where we're going to be. As an institute, an organization, as the organizations you're with, and where we're at in regards to health. So know that we are also in that space. We want to thank you for time and learning about SJTI and connecting with SJTI. You know, we know that there are many touch points for folks in which you may know alum, have a supervisor, have a friend that went. That's often how we are marketed, so to say, and so we always appreciate that. And if you have questions specifically, please let us know, right? We have an administrative assistant who's amazing, who will get those questions to us. We want to honor time and knowing that is at 11:01 and what that is. So anything else for faculty before we wish folks a happy rest of their Friday?
I just want to say happy Juneteenth, and it's great to see you all as future SJTI family members. Yes.